Greetings and welcome to Talk a Little, Learn a Lot, the American Society of Naval Engineers podcast. I am your host, Stephen Phillips. In this podcast, we talk a little and learn a lot about naval engineering while inspiring the next generation of STEM professionals. Today, I'm joined by the Honorable Nickolas Guertin, Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition. We are at the Technology, Systems, and Ships Symposium, which focuses on meeting the demand signal. As the CNO has stated, quote, "Our sailors must be the best warfighters in the world with the best systems, weapons, and platforms to ensure we can defeat our adversaries. We will put more players in the field, platforms that are ready with the right capabilities, weapons, sustainment, and the people who are ready with the right skills, tools, training, and mindset." The Honorable Nickolas Guertin was sworn in as Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition on December 20th, 2023. A presidential appointee confirmed by the United States Senate, he leads the Department of Navy's Research, Development, Acquisition, and Sustainment programs and the Department of the Navy's contracting community. Prior to this role, Mr. Guertin served as the Senior Advisor to the Secretary of the Defense on operational and live fire test and evaluation of Department of Defense weapons systems. He has an extensive 4-decade combined military and civilian career in submarine operations, ship construction and maintenance, development and testing of weapons, sensors, combat management products, including the improvement of systems engineering and defense acquisition. Most recently, he has performed applied research for government and academia in software-reliant and cyber-physical systems at Carnegie Mellon University's Software Engineering Institute. Over his career, he has led organizational transformation, improved competition, and increased application of modular open system approaches, prototyping, and experimentation. He has also researched and published extensively on software-reliant system design, testing, and acquisition. He received a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Washington and an MBA from Bryant University. He is a retired Naval Reserve Engineering Duty Officer, was Defense Acquisition Workforce Improvement Act certified in Program Management and Engineering, and is a licensed professional engineer. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining me on Talk a Little, Learn a Lot.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, I really enjoyed your remarks this morning, and I wanted to know if we could go through some of the comments that you made for this audience. What is the mindset we must have to meet the needs of the fleet and our nation?
So thank you for the question. I've really enjoyed coming here to this ASNE Symposium. I've been a member for a long time, and it was great to see a lot of friends and colleagues and get a chance to get caught up with a few people. One of the things we talked about was the need to be thinking about how we build our systems, including our ships, so that we can improve them more fluidly over time. This is the application of modularity both from a physical standpoint as well as a software standpoint. Our ships, aircraft, and submarines have to be enduring. They also have to conquer the tyranny of distance. But the mission systems that go into them need to be upgraded fluidly and flexibly in order to better match the warfighting problem set that the fleet will constantly be facing changing capabilities because your opponent gets a vote. And we need to position ourselves to be flexible in delivering game-changing warfighting capability as a part of our value proposition to the fleet and force.
You reminded the audience that the PRC has said it must be ready to invade Taiwan in 2027, but that may only be the start, that 2047 is also an important year. Would you expound on this for the Talk a Little, Learn a Lot audience, please?
Thank you. I was reflecting on a book that I read recently, China's Vision of Victory, where the author characterized the way they're internally talking about their position in history as overcoming what they refer to as the century of shame, where they want to, in the future, become the preeminent naval, military, and economic power on Earth. We should believe what your opponent says to themselves and position ourselves better for it. So I think that we should be thinking about the long span of history, how our potential opponents look at themselves, and how we position ourselves to be responsive.
What are some of the ready players we will have on the proverbial playing field of naval operations in the future?
Submarines are amazing, and they present a problem set to our opponents that will always put them in a position of concern. We need more of them. We are in the process of building Virginia-class submarines, and we're buying them through congressional approval at a very high rate, and we need to be building them at the rate that we're buying them. And that's something that the team has been working very hard on, is improving the production rate of Virginia-class submarines. At the same time, we need to renew our strategic missile fleet. The Ohio-class submarines were built a long time ago, and they're reaching the end of their service lives. So we are also recapitalizing that part of the submarine fleet with the Columbia-class ballistic missile submarine. So we need to increase our submarine building capacity by a lot in a relatively short period of time. That's one part of it. Another part is we need to continue to produce our surface combatants like the Arleigh Burke destroyers, but the Flight 3 versions of them are even more powerful than the ones we built in the past, with much better improved radars, the Spy-6, as well as other capabilities. However, we've squeezed as much as we can get out of that hull form, and we need to position ourselves to build surface combatants into the future, including DDGX and other ways of taking advantage of a more hybrid fleet that would include unmanned platforms. That design is being worked on. Don't have any details on that now. But another part of the capable fleet is the frigates that we're building at Fincantieri Marinette Marine, and positioning ourselves to be able to build even more of them with a second source. So that's another thing that we've positioned my successors for, is to continue to build surface combatants through destroyers, but increase the speed of supporting surface combatants like frigates. And then also to continue our pace of maintaining a 31-ship amphibious fleet, while also at the same time building the supporting fleet we need, oilers and supply ships and others necessary to conquer the tyranny of distance.
What do we need to do to improve our ship's repair cycles?
So our ship repair cycles get built into how the ships are built. So the ships we have are going to have to be managed in terms of their ship repair cycles in just by virtue of the way they're constructed. One of the things that we need to be thinking about in the future is how do we build ships to facilitate more rapid repair cycles and shorten the duration that they need to be in long shipyard availabilities where they're offline and not available to be surged and ready to support fleet needs.
What are the analogous naval engineering endeavors in which the Navy can find lessons learned to ready the fleet?
I am particularly interested in understanding how to apply physical modularity to ship designs in the future, to look at how we upgrade our mission systems by being able to pull things out and put things in rapidly without having to have long, very disruptive physical changes to the ships. That capacity would be something that would be built in as a part of an architecture precept before the ships are built.
You mentioned a new role, DASN for Mission Systems. Please describe this role and how it is having a positive impact.
I'm particularly proud of that aspect of my time in this position. When I was interacting with my deputy assistant secretaries, the things that I knew were happening in places like PEO for undersea weapon systems and integrated weapon systems didn't come into conversation very often because they were under DASN ships. Amazing hard work, a great team doing the things they needed to do based on the needs of the times we were in. However, I wanted to have more visibility to the mission systems, the things that make a ship a warship, in the conversation of how we manage the portfolio. So we took one of the billets we had and upgraded it by, when we put out the solicitation for that position, we added the mission systems characteristic to it, and we got a great candidate, great set of candidates that we down selected to probably the best athlete that could be in the job, Jim Day. He's going to be fantastic.
I appreciated your comment that the fleet should be able to update its systems, its software systems, as rapidly as one has their apps updated on their phone. How can we do better in this area?
Our ships, aircraft, submarines, and other vehicles that we have for ground combat systems are what I would refer to as cyber-physical systems. They're physical things that conquer the tyranny of distance, but the thing that makes them militarily valuable are the mission systems and being able to shoot weapons, all of which are software intensive. So we need to be thinking about that aspect of how we change fleet capability, something that can be done without having to show up with a welder or a grinder. How can we update those systems? And if we could do it pierside, why can't we do it at sea? We think about how all of the supporting elements of what it takes to field capabilities, technical authority, authorities to operate, the other aspects of system design. We need to change all of those things to facilitate rapid capability delivery as a part of normal everyday life. So let me add another comment about what it means to upgrade our software-intensive systems over time. When I was the Director for Operational Test and Evaluation, I worked with that team to put out a new strategy and then a new implementation plan about how do we become more fluid at testing systems that are built to change over time. We put together new policies, new processes. We authored a whole bunch of articles that we put in the Naval Engineers Journal. And after that, my successor, Dr. Doug Schmidt, has picked that up and continued on that idea of how do we become more comfortable in testing systems that are built to change over time. And that team has done a great job of embracing that moment, and now they're ready for us on the mission system development side to continue to press ahead with improving capability as a part of regular everyday life.
In your remarks, you identified that we have a whole of society problem, and that this includes a focus on naval engineering, especially shipbuilding. How will we address this challenge?
It's a big problem we're facing currently because we have very few universities that are teaching naval architecture and marine engineering. I think that with the advent of the possibility of having a Ships for America Act, where we will, as a nation, look to get back in the business of building maritime ships as well as combatant ships, that call for being a part of the shipbuilding community, both as waterfront technicians as well as engineers and designers, will draw more people into this business, and that will help me or my successors better build the nation's military naval capabilities.
Mr. Secretary, you mentioned that you're an ASNE member. I'd like to shift now to ask some questions about the organization and your view of the organization itself. But let me start with a question that I ask all ASNE members when we normally start the podcast, and that is, when did you first realize that you had a passion or affinity for naval engineering?
Well, I'll tell you, I started out of high school enlisting in the Navy as an electrician's mate for nuclear submarines, and later on, I was fascinated by really the engineering beauty of steady-state nuclear power operations and wanted to be a part of designing these amazing machines. To the extent that I even went past my kind of baseline qualifications and learned and got qualified to be an engineering watch supervisor, which is something people normally don't do until their second sea tour. But I emerged out of my 6-year enlistment with a passion for engineering and desire to be involved in building systems like that, being a part of building something great and perhaps even leading it someday. Never in my wildest imaginations back in those days that I would end up being at the position that I'm in now. It's been an amazing ride.
Do you have a favorite ASNE event that you have participated in?
Well, actually, one of the events I worked on when I was at the Software Engineering Institute was looking at how do we improve modularity and flexibility in ship design, and wrote a couple of articles for that event. And it was a great opportunity to express some creativity and kind of expand the horizons that people consider what it means to build ships that could be flexibly changed over time, which has been a common theme for my practice in this area so far.
And have you ever written for the Naval Engineers Journal?
Several times, actually. The first time was in 1998, where I partnered up with a friend and colleague, Bob Miller. We did a historical treatise on designing sonar systems, looking at what it took to do that through the lens of military unique electronics, or mil-spec, and how and why we shifted to a fundamentally different construct of leveraging the commercial sector for electronics and the commercial sector for how to do software development. And that we have been on that tear ever since and completely changed how we field capability for first submarine sonar and then across the submarine, then across the fleet. And that article that we wrote for ASNE Journal was a part of cementing in the idea that I could be a researching practitioner. And then I've had a chance to publish with ASNE Journal a couple of different times.
What changes would you like to see for ASNE?
Well, I'm a big fan of the organization. I think that it's certainly a lot of hardworking people thinking about how to improve the organization. I don't want to undermine their creativity, but I would have to say that we are living in different times, and some of the ways we do media outreach have changed, and perhaps we could take advantage of those different modalities to pull more people into our world, perhaps expanding out to be supporting adjacent practitioners, not just engineers, but also logisticians and contract officers and the other teammates we need in order to do this work.
What aspects or elements of ASNE would you like to preserve?
One of the things about the journal specifically is that the research papers that oftentimes get published in there are serious pieces of thought work that have deep impact to design of how we build out our fleet. I think, though, also we could sprinkle in some articles that are perhaps a little bit more digestible and easier for people who aren't in those deep research areas to make the journal more accessible and enjoyable to consume.
What message would you share with young STEM students and professionals with respect to naval engineering and ASNE as an organization?
So young professionals, what I would highlight to them is I would reflect on my career a little bit about how amazing it has been. How I've been able to work on, ship hulls all the way through combat electronics, weapons, and the other aspects of what it means to deliver capability at distance. The diversity of learning, the continuous growth as a professional has been just a joy, honestly, to be involved in as a part of my personal career.
Mr. Secretary, I have really enjoyed this conversation. Before we close out, do you have any shout outs that you want to give to folks that might be listening to Talk a Little, Learn a Lot?
I will say that all of the co-authors I've had for the various papers that I've published are great friends, great colleagues. Couldn't have done it without them. I've never wrote anything on my own. It's great to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, to make sure you're not kind of drinking your own Kool-Aid, if you will. So all of those co-authors, and I won't name them because there'll be people the audience doesn't recognize, but a few names that they will recognize is the Secretary of the Navy, Carlos del Toro, for giving me the opportunity to have the job of my lifetime. The Secretary of Defense, who I was working for him as the Operational Test and Evaluation Director, and he needed to release me from that to come to this job. Now, up to that point, being DOT&E was the best job I'd ever had in my life, but this one is so much better. And then Deputy Secretary Hicks certainly could not have gotten that job if it weren't for her advocacy. My other peers in the acquisition executive team have been great partners to work with, and Dr. LaPlante as a kind of a pseudo boss and a great mentor and colleague. So many other people. I will have to say one other person I want to make sure I mention, besides my wife, who none of this would happen without her. Thank you, Maria. But I named the Acquisition Excellence Awards for the Navy after the person longest serving in this role, Sean Stackley. Great friend, great mentor, and we owe a lot to his leadership in the past, and I owe a lot to him too. So thank you for the opportunity to list off a few people. I tried not to be too boring about it, but definitely wanted to get those thoughts out there.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary, for taking time today to discuss the Naval Science and Technology Symposium, your view of ASNE, thoughts on its future, and on the state of naval engineering. I hope that we can welcome you back sometime on Talk a Little, Learn a Lot, the podcast of the American Society of Naval Engineers.